What was supposed to be the next big thing, but totally flopped? Google Glass. 3D TV. Google Plus was supposed to be the answer to Facebook. From what I've gathered in this thread, Google threw a lot of shit to see if it would stick LMAO. Not entirely relevant, but I liked the trend where everybody wanted the smallest cell phone possible. For 20 years cell phones got smaller and smaller, often being the main selling point of the phone. Then all of a sudden you could watch videos on your phone, and almost overnight the trend reversed to larger is better. Google Wave. It was supposed to replace email with a more collaborative approach. Essentially it was like a dynamically created discussion board you'd share with select people, and you could have a more readable discussion than one with a bunch of forwards and CCs and the like. I thought it was a good idea, but it flopped big time and Google got rid of it after a few years. Airship travel. These were the next awesome way to travel long distances. In fact, the spire on top of the Empire State Building was meant as an anchoring point for airships. The Hindenburg kind of put a damper on it, though. The Segway. It was supposed to change the way everyone lived. The invention of the century or something like that. A really big deal. Segways were supposed to revolutionize travel and replace the automobile. Now they're just used for guided tours for dorks and tourist traps. The Dark Universe Cinematic Universe, starting with 2017's The Mummy. I cannot think about that movie without remembering when they accidentally released an incomplete trailer. Best movie trailer ever. For those curious. Link edit. LMAO, this blew up. Thanks for all the rewards. I remember watching it when it first debuted and was so intrigued by the purposeful eerie effect without music, and then the bird hits the pilot, and I'm like, oh, they fucked up. That fake fat they put in chips in the 90s that made everyone poop their pants. Edit. Thanks for the silver, obligatory. Of course my top comment is anal leakage. The Panama Papers edit. Since I have your attention, I'd like to direct you to ICIJ's response here. Xbox Connect. MoviePass. I sure got my money's worth while it was around. I never watched more movies in a month than when I had MoviePass. Such a horribly consumer-friendly concept that was never going to work long-term. Unfortunately, after I ended my subscription they signed me back up at least 2 more times without my consent, but I caught on and cancelled before they got any more of my money. LMAO. I had MoviePass, and holy shit, I couldn't believe how much money I was able to save. LMAO. How the hell did anyone get this idea approved and pull investors? This one was just fucking outstanding, honestly. I followed it in live time for its run as much as I could. This one might be a bit obscure just because I've only ever met one other person familiar with it, but Google's Project Era modular smartphone was looking like it could have been the end-all be-all of smartphones. Based off the PhoneBlock's idea of having a Lego-like hot-swappable module phone, the idea was that you could switch out any components of the phone on the fly. Camera, fingerprint scanner, even different quality screens. Conceptually, it really looked like it could take over the phone market, as it would lead to people not having to buy whole new phones anymore, but rather replacement or upgraded parts to a phone they already liked, thereby reducing costs and increasing utility. You don't want a phone with 5 cameras that inflate the cost unnecessarily? Just buy a 1-camera module. You want a 1440p Super AMOLED screen to replace your 720p regular screen? Buy one and swap it in. However, like many Google projects, it died off for myriad reasons and the long-standing era of $1,000 smartphone slabs lived on. Hoverboards? I remember in a span of 3 months everyone had them and showed them off and then they just disappeared. Edit. After further investigation I discovered they were banned in my province a number of years ago. I always hate the fact that they were called hoverboards. Minidisc. 2020. 2020 was going to be an ultimate year for partying, for Americans at least. 4/20th's technically the whole month. Cinco de Mayo on Taco Tuesday. Independence Day on a Saturday. Halloween on a Saturday and a full moon and the end of daylight saving time, which meant 1 extra hour of Halloween partying. Christmas on a Friday. And finally, New Year's Eve was on a Thursday, which meant the next year would begin with a 3-day weekend. This great combination happens when a leap year begins on a Wednesday. The previous time it happened was 1992, and it's not going to happen again until 2048. At the time, video calling with your phone completely flopped because 3G couldn't support it. There was so much advertising about this thing that was meant to be huge, but the tech really didn't work yet. But it did blow up later on with 4G, better phones, Wi-Fi and more public spaces. My friend who studies medicine had to install Second Life about 2 years ago for a class meeting. I don't get why they couldn't have used Skype, but okay. HD DVD still remember half the movies being blue and the others red. Kony 2012. Ouya and microconsoles in general. Amazon shopping buttons. They pushed really hard for those and I never saw the point. Asbestos, technically it was a hit. Right until it flopped when people figured out the whole, inhaling rock fibers is not healthy, thing. Soap shoes. These were like normal shoes, but you could grind on rails with them via an indent in the sole. If you heard of these things from somewhere that wasn't Sonic Adventure 2, please tell me where. And please tell me where I can buy a pair? PT demo. Edit. I feel like I need to clarify that I do not think video calling is useless or unpopular. I understand how it has helped out a great deal with medical, legal, educational and other fields. I also understand that the younger generation is a lot more comfortable with casual use of video calls. My point is that since the telephone came into widespread usage, there was this sense that the change to audio and video was inevitable and that it would become the default way to communicate over distance. Until the cordless handset became affordable, you were required to be in a specific location to make or receive a phone call, and their projections of telecommunications developments of the future were predicated on phones being in fixed locations. What I'm saying is that I don't believe video calling will ever supplant the text message as the default way to transmit short informational messages. Video calling may gain popularity for chatting and socializing, but the text is more or less here to stay for short messages. Nobody wants to go through the "Hi, how are you? I'm fine. Did you see that thing?" So, the reason I called is preliminary thing for simple informative statements. If you go all the way back to the 1930s through the 2000s, there was this assumption that the public wanted video calling, and wanted it to be the default method of contacting people. This was completely backward from the truth. The overwhelming popularity of SMS, text messaging demonstrated that the public wanted less, not more. Not saying that video conferencing doesn't have advantages or uses and isn't popular in those spheres. But, the idea of a video call being the default form of contact is something futurists assumed would be reality that never came to be. We definitely have the technology for it, there's just no need to physically lock eyes with someone, or even have to hear them, just to tell them to get milk. Windows phones. Microsoft was so confident they would bury the competition that they had a weird funeral procession for the iPhone. Johnny Manziel. That streaming service that lasted like 2 months. Quibi? Or Kupi, I think. Even bad timing aside, a mobile-based streaming service at a time when no one could really leave their house, the marketing was just horrible. I saw ads for it for nearly a week before I realized it was a new video streaming service, and by that point was so annoyed by the ads untrusting everything I didn't care at all, just out of spite. Also, I mean, it was just YouTube you have to pay for and got worse content. Edit. It was Quibi. It made so little impact I couldn't recall at first. Not sure if this one has totally flopped yet, but I noticed while in Costco the other day that there are no longer any curved TVs. If Costco is no longer carrying them, then I think we can assume they're going the way of the dodo. And yet curved monitors are popular right now. Must be the viewing angle is a better if it's just one person. Google Plus was supposed to be the new Facebook but bigger or something, but disappeared pretty quickly. It absolutely did not disappear quickly. They strung it along for years and tried to bake it into every aspect of using Google services. Man, I remember as a kid seeing the Ninja Turtles and Dick Tracy use videocoms and thinking it was so cool and wanting one for myself, and now if someone FaceTimes me I have a panic attack. Star Wars. The Old Republic was supposed to be the World of Warcraft killer. It was honestly a good game, but they botched it on launch by having too many servers, leaving them all feeling vastly underpopulated, making what little endgame content there was worthless since you couldn't find groups to do it with. Edit. Lot of responses saying a lot of games market themselves as the WoW killer. This is true, but a lot of the hype wasn't coming from the marketing in this case. It was actually coming from players participating in the beta. And rightfully so, because the early game is solid and there was a good population on the beta servers. Dip Dots. Been the ice cream of the future for 40 years now it seems. Edit. I also love Dip Dots, who doesn't? But when you've been claiming your product is the future for nearly half a century, when is the future? McDonald's pizza. Laser discs the size of records. Quibi. Sega's Dreamcast. Zune. TBF, Zune was pretty good. They were built like tanks, held tons of songs, videos, and had a great application. Hydrogen cars were a promising new form of motorized vehicle. They were supposed to be incredibly good for the environment, emitting only water as the exhaust. They exist, but not like how some people imagined. I was a pretty big hydrogen car believer at the time. There are some hydrogen stations, but mostly centered around California. Thing is that the hydrogen is quite expensive and not very efficient compared to smaller engines, hybrids, and EVs. The hydrogen is also somewhat inefficient to produce, store, and distribute as well. You can actually get a hydrogen car though, they're out there. The Toyota Mirai is a really good example. Out of all hydrogen cars, that one is definitely most popular. In fact, Toyota pays for $15,000 worth of hydrogen in your first few years of ownership since it's so expensive. This means that for your first 3-ish years of owning one, you might not have to pay a penny in fuel. As you can see, I'm still a hydrogen advocate. Don't expect to be able to take it very far from your nearest hydrogen station though. Edit. A word. Quadraphonic entertainment systems in the early 1970s were supposed to replace stereophonic systems. Now they are chiefly remembered for inspiring the name of The Who's second rock opera. Google Aardvark, search engine, Google Base, Google Biba Pay, Google Blog Search, Google Building Maker, Google Buzz, Google Checkout, Google Code Search, Google Directory, Google Express, Google Fast Flip, Google Flu Trends, Google Friend Connect, Google Goggles, Goog 411, Google Answers, Google Gesture Search, Google Trips, Google Plus, Google Helpouts, iGoogle, Google Image Labeler, Google Image Swirl, Inbox by Gmail, Google Insights for Search, Null, Google Labs, Google Latitude, Google Lively, Google Mashup Editor, Google Meebo, Google Moderator, Google News Weather, Google Notebook, Google Offers, Orkut, Google Pay, Send, Picasa, Picnic, Google Questions and Answers, San Francisco Digital Inclusion Strategy, San Francisco Municipal Wireless, Google Schemer, Google SearchWiki, Google SideWiki, Google Spaces, Google Squared, Google Sync, Google Translator Toolkit, Google URL Shortener, Google Video, Google Wave. Elizabeth Holmes. You guys remember the Fyre Festival disaster?